Chosen one, I want to ask you something before I say anything else. When was the last time you genuinely believed that what you are waiting for is still coming? Not the rehearsed belief, not the version you say out loud when someone asks how you are doing, the belief in the quiet, the one you hold privately, the one that does not need an audience. Because I think for some of you, that private belief has been getting harder to hold. Not because you lost faith, but because faith that is carried alone for a long time gets heavy in a way that is difficult to explain to anyone who has not carried it. You still believe, but the believing has become work. Tonight, I want to give that belief something to rest on. Not a new promise, an explanation. Because I think the hardest part of your waiting has not been the absence of what you are waiting for. It has been the absence of understanding why it is taking so long. When you do not understand the why, the mind fills in the gap with the wrong answers. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I missed my window. Maybe this is just not something that is going to happen for me. Those answers are wrong. And tonight, I am going to replace them with the right one. Underscore, 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 underscore. Let me start with something that is going to reframe everything you have been through. The person being prepared for you is not ready yet either. I know that sounds simple, but I want you to sit with it for a moment. Because most of the time, when we think about waiting for the right person, we frame it as, God is working on me, and when I am ready, they will appear. But that framing puts the entire weight of the delay on you, as if the only thing standing between you and what you are waiting for is your own unfinished growth. And that is not accurate. What is actually happening is a two-sided preparation. You have been in a process. And simultaneously, in a life you cannot see, someone else has been in their own process. Their own stripping down, their own seasons of silence, their own closed doors and collapsed plans, their own moments of praying into what felt like nothing, two people being shaped separately in different places through different circumstances toward the same convergence. And here is what God does not compromise on. He does not release the connection before both sides are ready, not because he is withholding something good from you, because he knows what happens when something arrives before the foundation can hold it. He has watched people receive too early and carry what they were not yet equipped to carry. He has watched the weight of an unprepared blessing damage the very thing it was meant to build. He will not do that to you, and he will not do it to the one being prepared for you. So the waiting has never been about punishment. It has never been about you being less than. It has never been about God forgetting what he promised. It has been about two people being built to a standard that can sustain what is coming, and the standard is almost met on both sides. Underscore, 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 underscore. I want to explain what that preparation has actually looked like in your life. Because I believe you have been in it without fully recognizing it for what it was. There were relationships that ended. Some of them ended painfully. Some of them ended in ways that made you question your judgment, wonder what was wrong with you, sit with a grief that surprised you with how long it lasted. And in the aftermath of those endings, you learned something that no season of abundance could have taught you. You learned the difference between someone who chose you and someone who needed you. You learned what it feels like when a person's presence in your life is conditional, contingent on what you provide, what you perform, what you produce. You learn to recognize the specific exhaustion that comes from loving someone who is consuming rather than contributing. That is not a small education. That is the education that protects everything coming next. Because the person being sent to you is coming with substance. And substance recognizes substance. But it also requires someone who has already learned to stop accepting the counterfeit. The painful relationships were not failed attempts at the right thing. They were the curriculum that clarifies what the right thing actually feels like. And here is the difference you will notice when the right person arrives. You will not feel a rush of adrenaline that you confuse for connection. You will feel something much quieter, something that does not demand anything from you immediately. Something that feels unexpectedly like rest. Like you have been holding your breath for a very long time, and this person's presence is the first deep exhale. That is not how the counterfeits felt. The counterfeits felt like urgency, like chemistry, like electricity, and electricity, if you are not careful, burns. What is coming feels like warmth, steady, consistent, present, without being consuming. You will recognize it not by how loud it announces itself, but by how your nervous system responds. Peace, where there used to be performance, safety, where there used to be assessment, being fully seen, without having to explain yourself into being understood. Underscore, 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 underscore. Now, I want to talk about them. Not you for a moment. Them. Because I think it matters for you to understand who this person has been becoming while you have been becoming. They have not been living in paradise while you were waiting. They have been in their own difficulty. They have faced seasons where the resources were not there, where the support they needed did not show up, where the life they imagined looked nothing like the life they were living. And in those seasons, they made choices. They chose not to become bitter about what was taken from them. They chose not to let scarcity make them grasping. They chose not to let loneliness make them desperate. They chose not to let disappointment make them closed. Those choices cost them something. The same way your choices in your difficult seasons cost you something. And what those choices built in them is exactly what you need from someone who is going to walk beside you. Emotional steadiness, the kind that was not given to them. The kind that was developed because they had to find their own footing when the ground shifted. Generosity that does not come with strings, because they understand what it is to need something and have someone attach conditions to their help. They will never do that to you. Patience, real patience, not the performance of patience while resentment accumulates underneath. The actual capacity to sit with the unknown and not let the unknown destroy the present. They learned those things the hard way, the same way you did. And that shared language, the language of people who were refined before they were released, is going to be the foundation of a connection unlike anything you have experienced before. Underscore, 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 underscore. I want to address something that I think has been quietly underneath your waiting, the fear that you have become too much of yourself for someone to meet you. You have grown significantly. The person you were at the beginning of this waiting season is not the person you are now. You know more. You see more clearly. You require more authenticity. You are less easily impressed by things that used to impress you. Your standards are higher, not because you became demanding, but because you became clear. And at some point, that clarity started to feel like a liability. Like maybe you had outgrown the pool. Like maybe the growth that was supposed to prepare you for connection had actually made connection harder to find. I need to tell you directly, that fear is a lie. What you became in this season did not disqualify you from being found. It refined the signal. The person being sent to you is not looking for who you were before the hard seasons. They are looking for exactly who you became inside them. Your depth is not intimidating to them. It is familiar because they are carrying the same depth, developed through the same kind of fire. Your silence is not off-putting to them. They understand what silence means in a person who has learned to stop filling rooms with words that do not carry weight. Your caution is not rejection. They know the difference between someone who is guarded and someone who is careful. And they will respect the carefulness because they are careful too. What you have become is not too much. It is precisely enough for the person who has been becoming their own version of precisely enough on the other side of their own fire. Underscore, 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 underscore. Now, let me speak about the place, because I believe the coming season involves more than a person. It involves a shift in environment, and I want to explain why that matters. There is something that happens to a person when they have been in the same environment for too long, particularly when that environment was shaped by a season they have now outgrown. The environment begins to function like a ceiling. Not because anything is wrong with the place itself, but because the person grew taller than the room. You may have been feeling this. A restlessness that rest does not resolve, a fatigue that is not about sleep, but about atmosphere, a sense that the conversations around you, the rhythms around you, the pace of everything around you, no longer fits the pace of what is happening inside you. That is not ingratitude, that is discernment. Your spirit is reading the room accurately. The room is too small, and what is coming, the person, the resources, the assignment cannot fully unfold in a room that has become too small to hold it. So there will be movement. I want to be honest about the fact that movement is not always comfortable. Leaving what is familiar, even when the familiar has become limiting, involves a grief that is real. You are allowed to grieve what you leave. You are allowed to carry tenderness for the seasons that formed you even as you walk out of them. But the grief and the movement can happen at the same time. You do not have to be finished grieving before you are allowed to go. Abraham left while it still cost him something to leave. Ruth walked into unfamiliar ground while the grief of her loss was still fresh. Neither of them waited until they felt ready. They moved in the direction of what they could not yet fully see and discovered that seeing comes to people who are already in motion. The same will be true for you. The picture will not be complete before you take the first step, but enough of it will be clear to take the next one. And the next step will illuminate the one after it. That is how this works. And you already know how to move in partial light. You have been doing it for years. Underscore, 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 underscore. There is one more thing I was shown about the person coming into your life, and I want to say it carefully because it is the part that matters most. They are not coming to complete you. I know that sounds like it should be obvious, but I think there is a version of waiting that quietly slides into hoping to be rescued, where the prolonged difficulty of the season creates an invisible expectation that the person being sent will arrive and make the difficulty stop, that they will be the answer to the exhaustion, the solution to the financial pressure, the fix for the loneliness, the thing that finally makes the life make sense. And I want to gently but clearly say that expectation, if it is sitting in you, needs to be released before they arrive. Not because those things will not change, some of them will, but a person who arrives carrying the weight of being your rescue is set up to fail, because no human being can carry that weight without eventually collapsing under it. And a connection that begins with that dynamic does not stay. What is being sent to you is a co-laborer, Someone who has their own calling, their own assignment, their own reason for being placed on this earth. And when those two callings come together, not one saving the other, but both moving forward side by side, what gets built is something neither of you could have built alone. Not because you needed each other to be complete, but because the assignment requires both of you. The vision is bigger than one person can carry. The building requires two sets of hands. The territory is wider than a single life can cover. That is the design, and arriving at it, healthy arriving with your wholeness intact, with your identity settled, with your dependence placed correctly on God, and not on what is coming, that is the preparation this season has been doing in you. You are almost there. I want to speak directly to the fatigue now, because I know that for some of you, this is not your first time hearing that something is coming. You have heard it before. You have believed it before. You have held the hope carefully, trying not to squeeze it too tightly, trying to stay open without becoming desperate, and the seasons kept turning, and the thing kept not arriving. And now you are here, still holding, still believing, but tired in a way that goes deeper than tired. The kind of tired that lives in the part of you that has been patient for so long, it has almost forgotten what it was being patient for. I want to say something to that part of you. Your faithfulness was not wasted, not a day of it, not one morning where you chose to get up and keep going when everything in you wanted to stop, not one prayer you prayed into silence, not one moment of choosing integrity when compromise would have been easier. None of it was wasted. It was all building something, not in the loud, visible, measurable way that makes you feel like progress is being made. In the quiet, foundational way that becomes visible only in retrospect when you look back from the other side of the breakthrough and trace the thread back through every ordinary, faithful, exhausting day and see what was being constructed the entire time. You are almost at the place where the looking back happens. I want to be honest with you about what that means. It does not mean everything changes overnight. It does not mean the next 30 days will resolve everything the last several years set in motion. But it means the direction has changed. The long period of going underground of seeds buried in soil that showed no signs of producing anything is transitioning. And what is beginning to break the surface is going to grow faster than the years of waiting made you expect, because that is what happens with seeds that took a long time to germinate. When they finally break through, they grow with an urgency that makes up for the time they spent underground. The growth is coming. The person is coming. The shift is coming. Not because I am telling you what you want to hear, but because what was planted in you during this season was always designed to produce. And it is producing underscore, 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 underscore. Receive this with me. Father, I thank you for the person standing at the edge of this new season. I thank you for the years they carried what others could not carry, for the silence they endured without walking away, for the private faithfulness that no one else saw, but that you recorded in full. I speak over them now. The waiting is not wasted. The preparation is complete. The person being sent carries what they need and needs what they carry. I release into their life the connection that was always ordained, not arrived at by accident or effort, but aligned in divine timing by a God who makes no mistakes. I release the environment that fits what they have become, the room that is tall enough to stand in, the atmosphere that cooperates with the gifts, the ground that produces without resistance. I release the provision that belongs to this season, not as a reward for suffering, but as the natural supply of a God who equips what he assigns. And I speak peace over the waiting that remains, not the absence of longing, but the settled confidence of someone who knows that what is coming has already been decided, that the steps have already been ordered, that the timing is already in place. May they walk forward without striving. May they receive without guilt. May they be surprised by joy in the ordinary moments between now and the fullness of what is coming. In Jesus' name, Amen. Underscore, 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 chosen one. If this word settled into a place in you that needed to be reached tonight, the private place, the tired place, the still believing but barely place, leave a comment with the words, "Both of us were being prepared." Because that is the truth. And sometimes the truth needs to be spoken out loud before it fully lands. If someone in your life is in their own long season of waiting, carrying the same quiet fatigue, asking the same private questions, send this to them. Be the word that reaches them tonight. Subscribe so you are here when the next message comes. Until then, go knowing that the other side of this preparation is not a promise. It is an appointment, and appointments in God's calendar are never missed. Amen.